Over the last few days, I've been feeling this really strange, overwhelming feeling. I kind of wake up with it and it weighs me down, and I feel like I just carry it around with me all day long. I go to sleep and I still have it. I just feel heavy. I can't quite shake what it is that's going on in my mind, and I've been trying to figure out what it is. Is it that I'm stressed out? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I feeling burnt out? And it's really just such a difficult idea to put my finger on that I've just been really thinking about it, and to the point where I'm even afraid if I'm just dwelling on it too much. Should I just let it go? Should I just move on? And as I was thinking about this, I was just trying to figure out, like, what is it that I can do in my life, in my world, to improve things? Do I need to talk to someone? Do I need to see someone? Am I not doing enough? And then I started realizing that a lot of this comes down to one simple thing that I tell everyone to practice, and so I figure that at this point it's something that I need to practice as well. And what this is, at least right now for me, is I need to practice some patience. I do practice it as much as I can when it comes to my endeavors. If I'm trying to learn a new design to draw or a new technique or just something new, I try to be very patient with myself, and I'm always patient with other people as well. But I feel that I've been very impatient when it comes to other things in my life. Anytime that I find that there are thoughts that I am having a difficult time with, any memories that I need to work through, any experiences that made me uncomfortable, I'm very impatient. And it's this impatience that causes me to start stressing and ruminating a lot. And so I think that right now it's really important for me to take a moment and talk about this just a little bit, because I feel like if this is a problem for me, then there's a chance that some of you out there might also need to have a discussion about this. So today, as I draw, I'd like it if you joined me and we talked a little bit about what it really means to be patient. And who exactly is it that we're being patient for? So before I get started, first of all, if you're new to my channel, my name is Betsy, and I love to draw, I love to doodle. I am a mathematician by training, and I'm at home enough these days where I feel like I have enough time to draw and share some of my drawings and my processes. So if you like that kind of thing, I'm here for you. And if you have been following this channel for the last couple of months, thank you very much. It's really nice to have all of you here, and I really do appreciate the chance to kind of get to know people and to talk to people about all these wonderful things. So, just right off the bat, I'd like to share something that happened precisely last night that really frustrated me. And I think it has a lot to do with this whole idea of patient or of being impatient. So, last night, or actually last evening, the entire evening, I was being very diligent and I was recording quite a bit of footage for a video that I've really been excited to record. I've been wanting to show all of you the process behind how I make my art journals, and I really was excited. I'm still excited to do it. And I spent hours working on a new journal, and it started coming out really cute, and I recorded lots of footage, but I started to realize that my footage really wasn't going to be very usable. The angle, the sound, a lot of little details about it just weren't coming out right. And when it came down to it, when I started reviewing all the footage and started just really analyzing, should I use it? I ended up deciding not to use the footage. And all those hours spent, all of that work, all of that effort, I just felt like all of it was going to go down the drain. And what am I supposed to do now? I started getting really frustrated. And just that feeling that I'd been having over the last few days, it just really got amplified. I started asking myself, "Well, why am I even doing this? Why am I wasting my time? Why?" There were a lot of whys being asked during that moment, and so I just had to really try to break free of that feeling of helplessness, and just had to get up and go do something else. Because as we all know, that feeling of frustration is one that can actually poison the mind. As a teacher, when I worked with my students, I could see it in them. When there was something that they just couldn't wrap their mind around, or something that was difficult for them, I could see the frustration. And I know from in the past, having studied child development, that that kind of frustration can actually be detrimental to the mind in very physical and literal ways. Because what it does is, when you're frustrated, especially as a child, when we're frustrated, it fills our brain with chemicals that can actually stop us from learning and processing at a later point. So when we have kids and we notice that something happens and they're crying and they're throwing a tantrum, what is actually believed, at least by experts, is that it's really important to stop that tantrum one way or another. However it is that you do it as a parent is up to you, but you should try to distract them, or try to get them away from that feeling of frustration as a child, because we end up flooding their mind with certain chemicals that can actually impede them from learning properly in the future. In a sense, it poisons the mind. And as much as this happens in children, this happens in us as adults as well. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I've certainly had it, where something made me so frustrated, even as an adult, that I felt like I was almost going to throw a tantrum. It happens over the years occasionally, and I'm certainly not proud of it. Not at all. And so I've been asking myself recently, what is that all about? Because these days, with me working really hard to produce really good stuff on YouTube and for all my social media, I've been putting a lot of pressure on myself to make really good stuff. Like, I'm always asking myself, how can I make this better? How can I improve? But I'm also putting so much pressure on myself that when I feel like I'm not doing enough, I get really frustrated. And that same feeling that I would have as a child, that same frustration, it kind of starts to creep up. And I start wondering, why is that coming back up? So when I recorded all that footage, I worked so hard, I did my best, and in the end, it didn't pan out. I clearly remember sitting there and looking at all the video files on my iPad, and just looking at it and thinking, "Just let go. Just let go. It's okay." And it was so difficult, because I wasn't just letting go of some simple files on an iPad. I was letting go of all that hard work. And essentially, I was having to let go of all of those terrible emotions that were starting to creep in and flood in. So as I'm saying this, something else that I will admit to right now, which, again, is something I'm not proud of, is that I kind of have a temper. And I know some of you might be wondering, "You? A temper?" And it's I have a temper. I always have had it. And who I am currently is a response to a lifelong temper tantrum that I have had everywhere I go. I'm always unhappy with things. I always think it's never enough. Nothing is ever good enough. And I've carried that around with me my whole life, and I've never liked it. And so if you see me here talking now about being patient, about being kind, about just letting things go, I've had to learn that over the years. And so when I looked at all that footage on my iPad, all that ruined footage that I realized I wasn't gonna be able to use, I had to take a deep breath and remember, why am I doing this? Why am I even bothering? Well, it isn't so that everything can come out perfect every time. It wasn't so that I could feel like I'm the queen of the world. It wasn't so that I could give myself an ego boost every time that I record and produce a video. That wasn't the point. The point was so that I could learn, so that I could be challenged, and so that I could help or possibly help others as well face their challenges and come out better for it. Because one thing I can say for sure is that when these things happen, when there's something that comes up that really frustrates me, I don't always win. Sometimes I lose and I lose hard. Sometimes I face my challenges and I come out on the other side battered and bruised, but at least I came out of it and I'm going to move on. And so this little experiment of, recording footage and losing it, it was just a little thing. And yet I could feel my temper shifting very uncomfortably. I was very upset just thinking, wow, so much hard work. And I started asking myself, well, why am I so upset? Wasn't this the whole point? And this is where the whole discussion of being patient comes in. I was being very impatient. I was expecting something to happen. I didn't know what it was, but I had high expectations. And when those expectations were not met, I got frustrated. I got a little angry. And so something that I'm trying to remind myself now to ask myself whenever I do these things is to ask myself, what is it exactly that I'm expecting? And if I realize that I'm expecting too much, then maybe I need to take a step back and tone my expectations down. Because sometimes that's what happens. And I suppose I can make an analogy for this that is a little simpler. And it relates to something that I've heard a lot of you say in the comments. And I do love reading all the comments. So please, just as a side note, if you comment and I'm not able to get around to responding right away, please know that I do read them. I read every single one of them. So thank you very much for that. But what I have noticed is that there are a lot of comments of some of you saying that, oh, your drawings aren't as good, or that you can't get the lines as smooth as mine, or something along the lines of that. But what I find really nice and really encouraging is that I've noticed that some of you say, but that's okay. It's okay if my lines aren't as perfect as yours. I'll keep working at it. And so I'm noticing that even though you might find it a little frustrating that your drawing isn't coming out perfect, at least you are giving yourself that little bit of space. At least you are being patient with yourself and realizing that all of this is a process and that the outcome of that process may not be what you sought initially. You may come to realize that this endeavor is a little difficult, but you're okay with that. You are okay knowing that sometimes things are difficult and it's absolutely worth it to pursue those things still. And so I'm happy any chance I get to be able to share that thought with those of you who are here drawing with me, who are here listening and just chatting with me. It is so important to really be patient, and not just with our drawing and our doodles, but with everything, absolutely everything. When we're on the road driving with other people, are you being patient? Are you impatient? Do you find yourself yelling at people? Or maybe even just yelling at them in your thoughts. Those kind of thoughts can really poison your mind when you kind of get angry, when you get impatient. If you order something online and you get impatient waiting for it to show up because you want it to show up the next day, is that really necessary? How about waiting a few more days and just letting it be? And it seems like such a silly thing to say. It's something that we kind of tell children. We tell children that, "Oh, you need to be more patient. Just settle down. Just wait for it." We say that to kids all the time. And I would say it to my students all the time in the past when I worked with students. And it's so easy to say, and it's so easy to hear it, and it sounds so, I suppose, so mainstream that it's actually really easy to forget what it really means. What does it mean to be patient? To really be able to sit down and give things time. And in particular for me, as I'm going through this right now, as I'm thinking about it, as I'm trying to figure it out in my head, my impatience comes down to my inability to make progress quickly. And I think it really comes down to the fact that I have terribly high expectations of myself. And I do mean that exactly the way I said it. Terribly high expectations. It's perfectly fine to expect of oneself to do really well at something or to achieve a lot. That's perfectly fine. Those are called goals. And goal setting and goal having is actually a really good thing. I've read about it in a lot of different articles and books. It's really important to set goals for yourself. And so I try to do that, but then I think that my unfortunate aspect of myself, I suppose in a way being a perfectionist, I suppose, or just I have really high expectations, and when I'm not able to meet them, then that frustration starts to set in, and I start asking myself, why didn't I do better? Why didn't I draw that thing better? Why didn't I record that video better? Why didn't I clean the living room better? Why didn't I make dinner better? All the time, I'm constantly just asking, why didn't I do better? And that's not a nice thing to carry around. It's not nice at all. And I know as I'm sitting here talking about this, that being a perfectionist is kind of a word that we throw around a lot, but it's actually quite a burden. And I'm sure some of you know this. It's a fact. I'm not the only one who does this kind of thing. I'm sure there are many of you listening right now. You're probably nodding your head saying, oh, yes, that's me. So many expectations that we put on ourselves, expectations that are placed on us by others in our lives. And all of that put together means we have so many expectations. We are supposed to do everything perfectly well. We are supposed to cook and clean and drive ourselves places. And we're supposed to look pretty and do everything and sound intelligent, but sound cute. And who knows? Maybe those are just things that we tell ourselves. Maybe those are things that the world around us tells us we need to do. But wherever it is that it's coming from and however it is that we process it, those expectations can be quite a burden if we let them be. And so I think that if we actually practice patience and a little bit of forgiveness along the way, and not just for others, but also for ourselves, then we can really learn to start letting go of some of those toxic ideas that a lot of us just carry around. I know that I'm not the only one. When I wake up in the morning with that strange heavy feeling, when I wake up just kind of feeling like something's off, it's that. It's when I look at my bathroom and I realize that I should clean it and I just don't have the time today and I start getting stressed out because what kind of a what kind of a person am I that I don't get around to doing all the house chores that I'm supposed to do? What an abomination. It's a feeling that some other people have. If you look at your car and you know you need to fix it and it stresses you out, if you look at your backyard and you realize it needs to be cleaned and you just don't have the time and you start thinking, why didn't I get around to it? And these are all pretty standard things. This happens to so many of us, and yet at least for me, when I start thinking about all those things, I start thinking, "Oh, it's me, I'm the problem. I I should do better. Why can't I do better?" I have so many expectations for myself, and I realize that this can be a huge burden. And then what happens is that once this one little thing happens where I'm recording a video and I have to trash the footage and I have to let go and I have to say goodbye to it, instead of just simply accepting that everything's okay, instead, all of this starts bubbling up. And so, what essentially happens is that this one little event becomes the catalyst for an even bigger stressful event. Essentially, all of those things that had been on my mind for days or weeks, this one little thing happens and the floodgates open. And some of you may have experienced this kind of thing where you're just wondering, like, what happened? I was fine and now I'm not. And really that's what it is All these little things are just kind of building up in the background, and that's what it is for me. It's a series and a sequence of so many expectations, so many things that go wrong, one little thing here, one little thing there, and each presumed failure or each expectation that I'm unable to meet, even though usually these are expectations that I simply set for myself. Each time that happens, it just adds one more little tick mark to the list. And then before I know it, I ruin the footage for a video and I start to fall apart. And it's not a nice feeling. It's definitely not a nice feeling. And I'm aware right now that I'm being a bit vulnerable and kind of sharing things that maybe not a lot of people would share, but I find it really important to share these kind of things, mostly just because I've had this feeling lately as well that there are a lot of people on the internet who go around and share ideas and they start to treat others like they're not real human beings. And so I think sometimes it's really important to kind of show that I am a person, I am not a robot, and there are emotions and feelings and thoughts behind every video, behind every drawing. And just as much as I'm a person, I also want to acknowledge that so are you. It's silly, isn't it? But a lot of people on the internet these days don't practice much kindness and they go around saying a lot of rude things because they feel like they're safe. And so that's kind of just a little side note to this kind of conversation, this kind of video, I suppose, where we're just making art and chatting and just having a very cathartic discussion about some of those things that are very uncomfortable, some of those things that are very difficult to talk about sometimes, even around our loved ones. I would like to ask you to think about when was the last time that you talked to your loved ones about something like this? If you have a therapist, if you go to therapy, when is the last time you actually discussed something like this? When did you actually put thoughts to these kind of emotions instead of just going around wondering why you feel the way that you feel? And I suppose that if you are feeling okay, if you're having a good day, then that's awesome. That's hold on to that. Those nice days for some of us don't come along very often. And so, what I am going to do for myself today, now that I've had a chance to kind of talk about this with you, to really express some of these emotions and some of the reasoning behind some of these things that are happening. And as I'm finishing up that drawing there, so as you see, the footage was a little bit in time lapse. I sped it up so that we could see the entire process. I'm I'm going to try to express some emotions that are a little bit better, like some gratitude, because I really am very, very grateful for the ability to, first of all, express myself, to be able to put words to these ideas, because I know that for some people, there can be a lot of frustration because they simply don't know how to express these emotions. And I've been blessed with an ability to really put words to some of these things. And I'm still working through it and I'm still figuring it out. But at least in the meantime, just being able to talk about it can be very helpful. Being able to sit here and draw, super helpful as well. So this is the drawing that I completed. If you ever go and check out my Instagram, I do have it posted there as well. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about such an important topic about being patient and about managing our expectations. I hope you liked this one. It was really enjoyable, and I hope you have an excellent day today.